My brothers were smiling when I walked into the courtroom. Not big smiles. Not the kind of smiles people notice right away. Small smiles. Comfortable smiles. The kind men wear when they believe the law is already on their side. Michael sat at the plaintiff table in a navy suit, looking like grief had been tailored for him. Daniel sat beside him with his hands folded and his eyes on the floor. Their lawyer looked at me, then at Sarah, then at the plain cardboard box I carried against my chest. To him, it looked like junk. But inside that box was the reason my brothers should have been afraid. Inside that box were 14 yellow legal pads, 27 receipts, 3 notarized documents, 2 voicemails saved on an old flip phone, and 1 sentence written in my father's shaking hand. To the child who came back when everyone else found a reason not to. By the time the judge finished reading, no one in that courtroom was smiling. But I need to start before the courtroom. I need to start on the day my father came home from the hospital, because that was the day our family stopped pretending it was whole. Dad had always been a big man in my memory. Not tall, exactly, but solid. He was the kind of man who could carry a refrigerator up 3 porch steps, fix a lawn mower with a coat hanger, and make $3 last until Friday if the family needed it. But when Sarah and I brought him home from St. Luke's, he looked smaller. Not weak, he would have hated that word. Just smaller, the way a house feels smaller after the laughter has gone out of it. Sarah had made chicken soup that afternoon. Even after working an early shift, the house smelled of broth, disinfectant, reheated coffee, and the menthol cream the nurse told us to rub into Dad's knees before bed. Dad came in wearing the same gray cardigan he had worn to the hospital, but now it hung off his shoulders like it belonged to someone else. His hospital bracelet was still on his wrist. My daughter Mia noticed first. "Grandpa, do you still have to wear that?" she asked. Dad looked down as if he had forgotten it was there. "No, sweetheart," he said. "I guess I brought a little piece of the hospital home." Sarah's face softened for half a second before she turned back to the stove and stirred the soup harder than necessary. My brothers were already there. Michael, the oldest, stood by the counter with his phone in his hand, chin up, thumb moving like something more important was waiting somewhere else. Daniel stayed near the back door in his work jacket. He looked exhausted from the small repair shop he had opened months earlier. Dad sat at the kitchen table. For a moment, all I could hear was the simmering soup and the hum of the refrigerator. Then Dad reached into the cloth hospital bag and pulled out a manila envelope. He rested his palm on top of it. "I need to show you something," he said. His voice sounded thin. That frightened me more than the envelope. Michael put his phone face down. Daniel stopped looking out the door. Sarah turned off the stove. Dad slid the envelope toward the center of the table. Inside was a debt notice. The top page said $2,160,000. I remember the number because my eyes refused to accept it. $2,160,000. Dad's name was on every page. The lender's letterhead, the repayment schedule, the late fees, the county clerk's stamp, his signature. Michael picked up the first page and put it down like it had burned him. "Dad," he said, "what did you do?" Dad looked at his hands. "It started as a business guarantee," he said. "Then a refinance. Then another paper they said was temporary." Daniel leaned forward. "Who told you that?" Dad did not answer. That silence said enough, or at least I thought it did. At the time, I believed Dad was ashamed because he had made a foolish mistake. Later, I learned shame was only part of it. Fear was the rest. Michael stepped back from the table. "I can't do this," he said. No one had asked him yet, but fear had already spoken for him. Daniel rubbed his face. "My shop is barely surviving. Some weeks I don't even pay myself." Then they looked at me. Sarah and I had bought our small house because the mortgage was cheaper than rent, but only if nothing broke. No one got sick, and every paycheck arrived on time. Noah needed new glasses, the truck needed brakes, and Sarah had been cutting coupons like every dollar had to defend itself. Still, everyone quietly turned toward the person they had always expected to stay. Mia looked at Dad, his white hair, his bent shoulders, his trembling hands trying to put the papers back in order. He looked embarrassed. That was what undid me. Not the number, the shame on his face. This was the man who taught me to change a tire in the rain so I would never have to beg strangers for help. This was the man who worked overtime when Mom got sick and never once let us hear him complain. I asked for the pen. Sarah looked at me. She did not smile or pretend it was noble. Under the table, she squeezed my knee once. Hard enough to tell me she was terrified, but not hard enough to make me feel alone. At 6:43 p.m., I signed as guarantor on a payment arrangement that could ruin us. Michael called it brave. Daniel called it temporary. Dad said nothing. And Sarah looked at the papers like she had just watched a storm enter our house and shut the door behind itself. 2 days later, Dad moved in with us. We put his recliner by the front window. Sarah cleared half the laundry room for his medicine bottles, discharge papers, and a folder she labeled PAYMENT PM in black marker. That folder became another adult in our house. It sat on the counter like a judge. I worked double shifts at the warehouse until my feet felt bruised from the inside. Some nights I came home so tired I sat on the porch step before I could make myself stand again. Sarah noticed. The next night, there was a paper cup of coffee waiting on the step. She never mentioned it. That was how Sarah loved people. Quietly. She put coffee where your hand would reach. She packed leftovers and took the smallest portion. She told the kids grilled cheese was a cozy dinner when we all knew it was because we were saving money. We sold my motorcycle, canceled the family trip, and delayed one of Dad's prescriptions until payday. The kids stopped asking for small treats at the grocery store. Children learn the shape of worry when it lives in the house long enough. At first, Dad sat quietly in the recliner, staring out the window. He watched the mail truck like it was delivering a sentence instead of envelopes. When I mentioned Michael or Daniel, he looked away. But something unexpected happened that year. Dad came back to us. One afternoon, Mia brought him her spelling list. He mispronounced 2 words on purpose, and she laughed so hard that he laughed too. By the 3rd week, they had a routine. She sat on the rug. He sat in the recliner with his reading glasses low on his nose. Together, they argued over whether necessary was a mean word. In April, Noah brought Dad his bike chain. Dad had not used tools in months, but he told the boy to bring the bike outside. His hands shook, but his voice steadied. "Don't force something that only needs patience," he told him. One night, Sarah brought Dad's soup and tucked the blanket over his knees. He looked at her for a long time. "You didn't have to be kind to me," he said. Sarah set the spoon beside the bowl. "You're his dad," she said. "That makes you ours too." Dad looked down quickly. I pretended not to see his eyes fill. After that, I noticed he started writing more. Notes on yellow legal pads, backs of envelopes, empty spaces on old bills. Sometimes he turned the page over when I walked in. I thought it was shame. I thought he was listing what he owed. In a way, I was right, just not the way I thought. The first real warning came in May. I was outside changing the truck's brake pads when Sarah stepped onto the porch with the cordless phone in her hand. "It's for your father," she said quietly. A man's voice came through the speaker. "Tell Warren he knows what happens if people start digging." Then the line went dead. "Who was that?" I asked. He sat down slowly. "Just leave it alone." I almost did, because I was tired, scared, and already carrying a debt that felt like a hand around my throat. But that night, after everyone went to bed, I found Dad in the kitchen. He was sitting in the dark with one yellow legal pad open in front of him. Only the light above the stove was on. When I stepped closer, he tried to close the pad. I put my hand on it. "Dad," I said, "what did you get me into?" His eyes looked older than I had ever seen them. "I thought I was protecting them," he whispered. "Protecting who?" He did not answer. The next morning, I looked through the PWAM&P land folder. Most of it was exactly what I expected: statements, notices, insurance forms, and bank letters designed to make ordinary people feel small. But one page did not belong. It was a copy of an old promissory note from a company called Legacy Properties LLC. I had never heard of it. At the bottom were 3 names: my father's, a man named Ray Shelton, and Michael's. Michael had not mentioned that part when he called me brave. I felt something inside me go cold. I drove to work with that page folded inside my lunch bag. At noon, I called Michael. He answered like he was walking somewhere important. "What's up? What is Legacy Properties?" I asked. There was a pause so small another person might have missed it. Michael recovered quickly. "Old thing, Dad invested years ago." "Why? Your name is on the note." He laughed, but it was too quick. "A's a consultant, not an owner." "Then why didn't you say that night?" "Because it didn't matter." "It matters to me." His voice hardened. "Be careful, little brother. You signed your name. Don't start looking for someone to blame because you regret it." I hung up before I said something I could not take back. That evening, Sarah found me sitting in the driveway with the engine off. She opened the passenger door and got in. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "You found something." I nodded. "Michael's name is on one of the papers." Sarah closed her eyes. I expected anger. Instead, she asked the question that changed everything. "What if your father didn't make a mistake?" I looked at her. "What do you mean? What if someone used him?" The words hung in the truck between us. Used him. Not helped him. Not guided him. Used him. That night after Dad went to sleep, Sarah and I sat at the kitchen table with every paper we had. She made coffee. I made piles. Debt notices in one pile, loan papers in another, medical bills, county records, letters from the lender, the promissory note. By midnight, the pattern was clear enough to make my stomach hurt. Dad had not borrowed $2 million for himself. He had guaranteed a business loan connected to Legacy Properties, a company that had bought an old strip of land outside town near a highway exit. The land used to belong to my grandfather. It was the last valuable thing our family had. Years earlier, Dad had kept it after Mom died. He called it the rainy day property. Now that land was tied to the debt, and Michael had known. I did not confront him again right away. Anger wants a microphone. Truth needs a shovel. So I started digging. On my lunch breaks, I went to the county records office. I learned how to search deeds, liens, releases, and business filings. Public records are not hidden, but they are buried under boredom. On my 3rd visit, the clerk slid a copy across the counter. "You might want this one," she said. It was a recorded amendment to Legacy Properties. The company had been formed by Ray Shelton, a local loan broker who used to drink coffee with Dad at the diner. Michael had been listed as a managing member for 11 months. Daniel's shop had received an equipment advance from the same company. Not a gift, not a loan from Dad, a transfer from Legacy Properties. The date was 2 weeks before Dad signed the guarantee. I stood there staring at the paper while people behind me waited to renew vehicle tags. Mrs. Alvarez lowered her voice. Family, she asked. I nodded. She gave me the look people give you when they know the answer is going to hurt. Make copies, she said. So I did. Lots of them. The more I found, the less the debt looked like a mistake. It looked like a trap. Ray Shelton had convinced Dad that Legacy Properties was safe. Michael had encouraged it. Daniel had taken money through the business and later pretended he knew nothing. When the land deal failed, Ray refinanced the loan again and again, each time calling it temporary. Temporary is a dangerous word. It lets people do permanent damage while promising it will not last. At home, Dad kept writing. Sarah kept the binder neat. I kept working double shifts, and the phone calls kept coming. Sometimes no one spoke. Sometimes a man breathed into the line and hung up. Once, a voice said, "The old man talks too much." Dad denied knowing who it was. Then one Saturday morning, Noah found a folded note under the windshield wiper of my truck. It said, "Stop making copies." Sarah read it and immediately took the kids inside. I stood in the driveway with that note in my hand and felt fear turn into something harder. That was the day I drove to Ray Shelton's office. I placed the note from my windshield on his desk and told him to keep whoever wrote it away from my family. Ray leaned back and smiled. "Your father signed. So did you. Courts don't care about feelings." "No," I said. "But they care about fraud." His eyes changed for 1 second, and that was enough. When I got home, Dad was waiting for me on the porch. He knew where I had gone. He did not ask how. Old men who survive hard lives have ways of knowing when trouble has entered the yard. "You shouldn't have gone there," he said. "You should have told me the truth." He looked down at his hands. I was ashamed. Of what? Being lied to. Off raising sons who let it happen. That sentence opened the door. Slowly, in pieces, Dad told me everything. Michael had come to him first. Michael had brought glossy plans to Dad's kitchen table. Storage units, small retail spaces, a better retirement, work for Daniel's shop. He said I was too busy with Sarah and the kids to be bothered. Dad had been lonely then. Mom had been gone for 6 years. His knees hurt. His friends were dying or moving away. Then Michael said the words every old parent wants to hear. "We need you." That was all it took. Dad signed the first paper because he trusted his son. Then the project stalled. Then the permits failed. Then Ray said a refinance would fix it. Then Michael stepped away. Then Daniel said he never understood the details. Then Dad got sick. By the time he realized the debt had wrapped around him, he was too embarrassed to ask for help. I listened without interrupting. Not because I was calm, because if I opened my mouth, I was afraid my anger would scare him. When he finished, he reached into the pocket of his cardigan and pulled out a small brass key. "There's a lockbox at First County Bank," he said. "Your mother made me keep one." I put everything there after Ray started calling. Everything? His mouth tightened. Nof. The next Monday, Sarah took a half day from work and we drove Dad to the bank. He was too proud to use a wheelchair, so he leaned on my arm and pretended he was only doing it for me. Inside the lockbox were documents wrapped in rubber bands, letters, receipts, copies of checks, a flash drive, a sealed envelope with my name on it, and a handwritten ledger. Not one page, a stack. Dad had documented everything. Dates, calls, promises, payments, threats. The day Michael brought the first proposal. The day Daniel accepted money for shop equipment. The day Ray said the refinance was temporary. The day Dad's heart episode started after a collection call. The day Sarah brought soup. The day I sold the motorcycle. The day Noah put his allowance in the medicine jar when he thought no one was watching. Dad had written down not only what people took from him, but also what people gave. That was the difference between his ledger and revenge. Revenge counts pain. Dad counted truth. 1 year after I signed the guarantee, Dad called me into his room. It was raining that afternoon. He sat on the edge of the bed in an old flannel shirt, holding a folded document inside a plastic sleeve. "Read it?" he said. I thought it was another payment notice. My body had learned to dread paper. But the first line was a notarized transfer deed. The second line named the property. The third line named the new owners, me and Sarah. At the bottom was Dad's signature. Beside the notary stamp in his uneven handwriting, he had written the sentence I still hear in my sleep. "To the child who came back when everyone else found a reason not to." My hands shook so badly the plastic cracked. Sarah came to the doorway and stopped when she saw my face. Dad reached into the drawer and pulled out another envelope. "For Michael and Daniel," he said. Inside was a copy of the deed and a handwritten ledger summary. Dates, amounts, phone calls, missed visits, prescription payments, Sarah's medicine runs, my extra shifts, broken promises. Dad had documented everything, not to punish them, to tell the truth before someone louder rewrote it. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed and cried. Dad looked at her. "I saw you," he said. "The coffee, the medicine, the coupons, the nights you fed everyone else first." "Wasn't doing it for a deed," Sarah whispered. "I know," Dad said. "That is why your name is there too." The next morning I called Michael and Daniel. They came quickly once they heard about the property, not with concern, with calculation wearing a family face. Dad sat at the kitchen table with the ledger in front of him. Michael started first. "Dad, this isn't fair. We're your sons too." Daniel nodded. This will tear the family apart. Dad opened the ledger. No, he said. It was already torn. This only shows where. The room went quiet. Michael accused me of manipulating him. I wanted to throw every receipt across the table, but Dad lifted one hand and I stayed silent. He turned the ledger toward them. Every date, every promise, every absence. Daniel saw his own name first. Michael saw Sarah's. Sarah paid copay. Sarah made soup. Sarah bought socks. For once, Michael had no speech ready. Dad laid his palm on the deed. I did not give this to them because you are bad sons, he said. I gave it to them because when I became inconvenient, they did not treat me like a problem. Daniel cried. Michael did not. That told me everything. He pushed back from the table. You'll regret this? He said. Dad looked at him with a sadness that made the room feel cold. No, Michael, he said. I already regret what came before it. After they left, Sarah locked the front door. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then everything happened at once. Michael sent a letter through a lawyer claiming Dad had not been mentally competent when he signed the deed. Daniel's name was on it too, though I could tell from the wording that Michael had led him there. The same week, Ray Shelton's company filed a motion to enforce the debt against Dad's estate interest in the property. Even though Dad was still alive, that phrase made me sick. Estate interest, as if my father were already paperwork waiting to be processed. Sarah read the letters at the kitchen table. Dad sat very still. I watched his hand tremble near his coffee cup. Something in me changed. Until then, I had been trying to survive. After that, I decided to fight, not with threats, not with fists, with every document they thought we were too tired, too poor, or too embarrassed to use. Sarah found a legal aid clinic 2 counties over that helped seniors with financial exploitation. I wore my warehouse uniform to the first appointment because I had to go straight to work after. The attorney was named Grace Hollander. She was small, gray-haired, and had eyes that missed nothing. For 20 minutes, she listened without interrupting. Then she looked at Dad's ledger, then the promissory note, then the company records, then the threatening note from my windshield. She removed her glasses. Mystery. Carter, she said to my father, did anyone advise you to get separate counsel before signing these documents? Dad shook his head. Did anyone explain that your family land could be lost? No. Did your sons receive money or business benefits connected to this company? Dad looked at me before answering. Wes, Grace leaned back. Then we are not just talking about debt. What are we talking about? I asked. She tapped the ledger with one finger. Undue influence, misrepresentation, possible elder financial exploitation, and if Mr. Shelton threatened your family, maybe more. For the first time in a year, I felt the hand around my throat loosen. Grace helped us file responses. She contacted the State Attorney General's Elder Fraud Unit. She sent preservation letters to Ray, Michael, Daniel, and the lender. Preservation letters sound boring. They are not boring when guilty people receive them. Within a week, Michael called me 11 times. I did not answer. Daniel came to my work and waited by my truck. I didn't know it was that bad, he said. You took the money? Michael said Dad wanted to help. Did you ask Dad? He looked away. That was his answer. I'm sorry, Daniel said. I believed him, but sorry does not refill medicine bottles or give children back the year they spent learning not to ask for small joys. You should talk to Grace, I said. Who's Grace? Our attorney. His face went pale. Good. The case took 8 months. 8 months is a long time when every envelope feels dangerous. Dad's health rose and fell with the stress. Some mornings he woke up stubborn and clear. Other mornings he stayed in bed and stared at the ceiling. Still, he kept writing. His new ledger was different. Mia spelled necessary right today. Noah fixed chain by himself. Sarah laughed at dinner. My boy came home before midnight. That last one made me laugh even though I wanted to cry. Michael's lawyer tried to make Dad look confused. He asked about dates. Dad answered by opening the ledger. He asked about medication. Sarah produced the chart she kept in the laundry room. He asked whether I pressured Dad to transfer the property. Dad looked at him and said, my son pressured me to take my pills, eat soup, and stop hiding bills. That is the extent of his influence. Grace almost smiled. Ray Shelton was harder. Ray knew how to look clean in public. He arrived for every hearing in expensive suits and called Dad his friend. Then the flash drive from the lockbox came back from the investigator. I had forgotten about it. Dad had not. Months before he moved in with us, Dad had started recording calls on an old plug-in recorder. He did not record everything, but he recorded enough. One call was Ray. His voice was friendly at first. Warren, you don't need to bother the younger boy with this. He's got kids. Michael understands the business side. Then Dad asked about the new refinance. Ray said, it's just temporary paper. You sign it, we move the obligation, and everyone stays protected. Dad asked, can I lose the land? Ray laughed. Come on, don't let lawyers scare you. You trust me, don't you? Another call was Michael. This one hurt worse. Dad said, I need to tell your brother. Michael said, tell him what? That you messed up. He'll panic. Let me handle it. Dad said, the payments are more than I can manage. Michael said, then ask him to help. He always plays hero. Use that. I listened to that recording in Grace Hollander's office. Sarah sat beside me. Dad sat across from us with his eyes closed. When Michael's voice said, he always plays hero. Use that. Sarah reached for my hand. I thought I would feel rage. Instead, I felt a deep quiet. There is a kind of betrayal that burns, and there is a kind that freezes. This one froze me. Daniel's recording was different. He was scared, not cruel. He kept saying, Michael said it was handled, but he still took the money. He still stayed away. He still let Dad sit in shame while I signed a guarantee I did not fully understand. The turning point came during mediation. We sat in a conference room with a long table, cheap coffee, and a painting of a lighthouse on the wall. I stared at that painting whenever I wanted to say something that would ruin everything. Michael sat across from me. Daniel sat beside him. Ray sat at the end with his attorney. Grace placed Dad's ledger on the table. Then she placed the recording's transcript beside it. Then the bank records. Then the company filings. She did not raise her voice. That made it worse for them. Here is what we are prepared to show in court, she said. Mr. Shelton misrepresented the effect of the refinance documents to an elderly man in declining health. Michael Carter benefited from the company and encouraged his father to keep the truth from the only son who ultimately assumed payment responsibility. Daniel Carter received funds and later denied meaningful involvement. There were threats made after record requests began. There are recordings. Ray's lawyer asked for a private room. Grace said, no. Michael looked at Daniel like he expected backup. Daniel did not give it. For the first time, Daniel looked at me instead. I'm sorry, he said again. Michael snapped, stop talking. Daniel stood up so fast his chair hit the wall. No, he said. I have been stopping for 2 years, I'm done. Then he turned to Grace. I'll testify. Michael stared at him as if Daniel had slapped him. Ray's perfect tan face turned gray. That was the first moment I knew we might win. The settlement came 3 weeks later, but Grace would not let them bury everything quietly. The lender agreed to release Dad and me from the personal guarantee after evidence showed the loan had been refinanced under misleading circumstances. Ray Shelton's company agreed to forfeit its claim against the family land. The state opened a separate investigation into his loan practices with seniors. Daniel signed a repayment agreement for the equipment money he had taken. He also wrote Dad a letter. Not a text, not an email. A real letter in his own messy handwriting. Dad read it twice, then he put it in the ledger. Michael refused to apologize. Instead, he tried one final move. He challenged the deed in probate court after Dad passed away that winter. Dad died on a Tuesday morning. It was snowing. Not a heavy snow. Just enough to soften the street and make the world look gentle for a few hours. Sarah was holding one hand. I was holding the other. Maya and Noah had kissed his forehead before school, because Sarah told them Grandpa was tired but listening. His last clear words were to Sarah. Don't let him sell it cheap, he whispered. Sarah leaned close. Ooh, Dad's eyes moved to me. Any of them? Then he smiled a little. I left instructions. Of course he had. That is how I ended up in the courtroom with Sarah beside me and Dad's cardboard box in my arms. Michael claimed the deed was invalid. He claimed I had isolated Dad. He claimed Sarah had manipulated a sick old man with soup, medicine, and kindness. That last part almost made me laugh. Because it was the closest thing to the truth he said all day. Sarah had used kindness. She used it steadily daily until it built something strong enough to shelter all of us. Michael's lawyer spoke for 20 minutes. He described family harmony as if Michael had ever protected it. He described Dad as confused and me as desperate. Then Grace opened the cardboard box. One by one, she entered Dad's ledger pages into evidence. The judge read in silence. Dates, payments, hospital visits, missed calls, promises. The day Michael told Dad not to tell me. The day Daniel received the equipment money. The day Sarah bought socks. The day Mia rid to Grandpa. The day Noah gave him $4.73 for medicine. The day Dad wrote, I am not confused. I am disappointed. Then Grace played the recording. Michael's voice filled the room. He always plays hero. Use that. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table the same way she had done the night I signed the guarantee. Hard enough to tell me she was afraid, not hard enough to make me feel alone. The judge asked Michael one question. Did you say that? Michael swallowed. Yes, Your Honor, but it was taken out of context. The judge leaned back. Most cruel statements are defended that way. That was when Dad won. The judge upheld the deed. He rejected Michael's challenge and noted that Dad had shown clear intent, careful documentation, and consistent gratitude toward the people who cared for him. Michael did not lose everything that day. This was not a movie. No one dragged him away in handcuffs. But he lost the thing he wanted most. Control of the story. The court record now held the truth. My father had not been a confused old man tricked by his youngest son. He had been a wounded father who finally wrote down what everyone else hoped would stay unspoken. Outside the courthouse, Daniel handed me his first repayment check. Don't send them to me, I said. Send them to Sarah. She kept the family alive when the rest of us were counting excuses. Daniel nodded. Then he apologized to Sarah without explaining himself. A real apology is short. It does not build a house around the word but. Sarah listened and said, I hope you become better than this. Michael walked past us without a word. No apology, no blessing, no final insult, just silence. For a man who had spent his life trying to sound important, silence felt like the perfect sentence. We did not sell the land right away. The first spring after Dad died, Sarah and I drove out there with the kids. The grass was high and the old fence leaned like a tired man. For years, that land had been a number to everyone else. Collateral, investment, claim, inheritance, debt. To Dad, it had been memory. To us, it became a future. We kept part of it for the kids. We sold a piece at a fair price and donated part of the proceeds to the community clinic where Sarah worked in Dad's name. Not all of it. We were not saints. We paid off the mortgage, fixed the truck, bought Noah the glasses he needed, let Mia choose anything she wanted at the book fair, and replaced Sarah's winter coat after 9 long years. On the day the clinic opened the Warren Carter family room, Daniel came and stood in the back. He had kept his repayment schedule. Slowly, awkwardly, he was trying to earn a place at the table again. Michael did not come. He sent a card with one sentence. Dad would have wanted us all there. There was no apology, no accountability. Just another attempt to use Dad's name as a key to a door he had locked himself out of. I placed the card in Dad's old ledger because truth deserves complete records. Under it, I wrote my own note. Dad would have wanted the truth there too. Then I closed it. Years have passed now. Mia can spell necessary without thinking. Noah fixes his own bike and sometimes mine. Sarah still puts coffee where my hand will reach. The cardboard box sits in our hall closet. I take it down sometimes because I never want to forget what the pain taught me. Money turned our family into accountants for a while. Fear turned my brothers into strangers. Shame almost buried my father alive before his body ever failed him. But love kept records, 2 coffee on the porch, soup beside the bed, a child's allowance in a medicine jar. And every quiet sacrifice greedy people thought no one could prove. When people ask if I got revenge, I tell them the truth, I did. My revenge was watching my father's name cleared. My revenge was watching Sarah's kindness entered into a court record as evidence. My revenge was hearing my brother's cruel words played back in a room where he could not charm his way around them. And my revenge was turning part of that land into a place where tired families could get help. The last story anyone tells about my father will not be that he was foolish, weak, or lost everything. The last story will be that Warren Carter saw the truth before he died, wrote it down in his own hand, and left his final gift to the people who treated him like family when family became inconvenient. When I look back, I do not remember the number first, not the $2,160,000. I remember the folded document in my hands. I remember my father's uneven handwriting beside the notary stamp. I remember Sarah crying because, for once, someone had seen what she gave. And I remember the sentence that made my whole body go numb. To the child who came back when everyone else found a reason not to. That was not just a note, it was a verdict. And this time, the right person won.